All right, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, everybody. Today is Monday, December the 13th, 2021, and for those that are watching on YouTube that may not even recognize me, yes, I've shaved. Why did I shave? Well, to tell you the truth, I just decided to change it up, to be honest with you folks. Yes, I know I do have a baby face, and a lot of you may like it, may not, but again, this is how it'll be for a little bit moving forward, so let's jump right into it first and foremost. I just wanted to sort of address the elephant in the room for those watching visually, but yes, it is still me. A couple of people have already asked, believe it or not. So first and foremost, Prime Minister Boris Johnson says the first UK death has been recorded with the Omicron variant. No further details were provided. Again, notice the wording, with. I'm not saying he's incorrect. I'm not trying to say that he's lying or anything like this. I'm just saying we must be vigilant of this wording, particularly when it comes from such politicians, right? So again, we have to keep that in mind. As per usual, we'll get through the COVID stuff and then we'll jump into the global affairs. The next thing is that the U.S. Supreme Court has declined to block a New York vaccine mandate for healthcare workers that does not allow religious exemptions. Again, this I find quite peculiar. I'm not a lawyer. I'd like to see the legal justification because depending where you are in the world, even within that of the West or Europe respectively, there's a lot of people and a lot of judges that are saying, look, people have the bodily autonomy, sort of freedom of rights and freedoms in that regard. But again, I'm not a lawyer, so, I don't want to start saying, oh, there's a conspiracy or anything like this. Again, granted, again, look at the show that we have. We must be vigilant of all the different events occurring, especially with this being New York and whatnot. But with that being said, I don't want to, jump to conclusions or speculate to lead you folks in a particular direction that may not actually be the case. So we're going to leave that. We're going to put that on the back burner because I do want to look into that. So the next thing is that Chris Wallace has left Fox News and is now joining CNN's streaming service. He only did, I believe, Chris Wallace Sundays because he's getting older. His father was Mike Wallace, the very popular journalist, allegedly very well respected at the time. This was many years ago before I was around. Yeah, I mean, again, he's been with Fox News for a long time. He used to be on every night, I think, prime time at one point. He's been quite a well-respected journalist from my understanding. Don't get me wrong, there's a lot of interviews he's done on both sides, like, lashing out at Democrats and Republicans that I don't agree with him on. Sometimes I think he has a bit of a, snarky attitude to him. But again, maybe if CNN is his fit, then so be it. I'm really not trying to be sarcastic here. I'm just, let him do his thing. The guy's going to retire soon anyways. They got to replace Cuomo anyways too, right? So I'm not saying he's going to replace Cuomo on the evening hours, but that type of announcement sort of gives that sort of illusion of there being good things coming to CNN, especially with the last two incidences of Cuomo being suspended then fired, and then Cuomo's producer being arrested for literal I think underage rape or sex trafficking. Don't quote me on that, but in that ballpark. I just don't remember off the top of my head. So again, take that as you will. The next thing, as funny as the video is when I saw it, it does scare me. German police have started measuring distances between people with folding rulers in public. Yes, and I do want to say as well, here in Canada, within the geographical vicinity of New Brunswick, I can confidently say that I know some people there on the ground that have said, Dave, they've taken out the measuring sticks. And I say it's funny because you got to see the way they do it. It's this little stick, and then it unfolds, but the way they whip it out, it's hilarious. And they're all just making sure, are you standing 6 feet apart? Are you standing 6 feet apart? It's just, I mean, I laugh, but I got to laugh. If not, I'm going to cry because of how sad it is, in my humble opinion. But the next thing is that the future James Bond movie could be, quote, non-binary and use the pronoun they, according to Barbara Broccoli, who is the James Bond producer, has revealed. The problem I have with this is if it's catering to a particular group of people, and I have nothing against the LGBTQP or whatever it is community, and I don't mean any disrespect there, but look, I'm going to be completely honest with you. The way I view it, maybe I'm wrong, please tell me if I am, but the way I view it, Bond was always a man. Very simple. James Bond was always a man. It's as simple as that. Now, if the people on a mass level demand, maybe make James Bond a woman or something like this, then sure. I look, I'll be honest. I still want to, you maybe call me old school. I would still stick with who this character was originally. And to be consistent, I would say that about Wonder Woman as well. By the way, if people said, let's make Wonder Woman say Wonder Man, I would say the same thing. Like, in my opinion, at least, no. Keep her as a woman. Stop with this. Make new characters if you want this non-binary and all that. And I'm not trying to say this out of bad faith, genuinely. So again, that's where I personally stand. Maybe some of you disagree with me, and I respect that. It's not for me to, convince you or tell you folks which direction to lean in that regard. The next thing is that a Manchester United defender, Victor Lindelof, was taken off in a match with Norwich after pointing to his chest in worrying scenes. I actually reported this as well in the members only episode yesterday, as of the day I'm recording this. So, it just goes to show you. Speaking of which, Napoli, the Italian team Napoli midfielder Piotr Zielinski, 27 years old, was taken off after 19 minutes in the match against Empoli yesterday, after struggling to breathe and having chest pains. He became the second player to be forced off with breathing problems this weekend. I'm not trying to, make an anecdotal, factual sort of, missing context type statement here, but I really mean it, folks, when I say decide for yourselves. Again, we have fully vaccinated South African President Ramaphosa tested positive for COVID and is receiving treatment for mild symptoms. Again, decide for yourself, and I really do mean that. So again, as to whether or not the beep boop is efficient, if you will. The next thing is that, according to Prime Minister Boris Johnson, there is, quote, a tidal wave of Omicron coming. He says, "Get boosted now for our freedom," end quote. I'm not even going to touch that. I'm not. I'm leaving that there. The next thing is that China has said that American-style democracy has become a, quote, weapon of mass destruction used to interfere in other countries' affairs. The spokesperson for the Chinese Communist Party, the CCP, has said, quote, "Our country practices a whole process people's democracy under the leadership of the Communist Party of China." Both sides are BS. I agree with the CCP when they said that, America's culture has influenced other nations relative to that of covert intelligence operations. I do believe that, truthfully. It's been used to the CIA's advantage, granted, yes. At the same time, when the CCP spokesperson says the country practices a quote-unquote whole process people's democracy, give me a break, because we all know realistically that's not what it is, and I'm not trying to disrespect the Chinese people. I mean that towards the CCP specifically. The next thing, and again, this is what I mean, tit for tat, this is a chess game. Both these sides are liars, truthfully. Maybe one worse than the other, but either way, liars are liars. So the only people that suffer, again, you and I. The next thing is that let me just scroll down here a little more. German power price has exploded to over 200 euros per milliwatts, if I'm not mistaken. Please forgive me. MWH is the measurement term. I should have actually researched that before I recorded this. Please forgive me. An unprecedented record price as the country goes green. Germany plans to shut down 11 coal-fired power plants and the last 3 remaining and most modern nuclear plants by the end of 2022. Again, if they're okay with it relative to the legislative process that decided that, as long as there's no corruption or anything of the sort, so be it. But again, define corruption. This is another thing. We're realizing how rotten all these world leaders are. So the next thing is that Hillary Clinton appears again and claims that a, quote, demagogue has taken over the Republican Party. She's got to stop. She's had her time. She's trying to hold on to this whole thing. She's had her time for years and years. She's got to stop. She's had her thing, like Tim Dillon says too. She's got to go. She's one to talk. She's a demagogue herself. Let's not. This is my opinion. I'm not even getting into this. I'm not saying the Republican Party has saints in it. Don't get me wrong. But her to say that, no. Just my opinion. The next thing is that questions about Joe Biden's current mental fitness are, quote, ridiculous, Joe Biden said in a recent interview. Okay. Next thing is that the evidence speaks to the contrary, but okay. More than 6,000 objections to the new compulsory vaccination law were submitted to the Australian Parliament in just 4 days. The objection period ends in 29 days. Let's see if they do, because again, this is the people speaking up. So let's see what happens. Genuinely. We got some friends in Australia. Let's see. The next thing is that Russia has vetoed a UN resolution to recognize climate change as a threat to global security. That's a chess move, in my opinion. And I also think that they may, in fact, believe that literally. I mean, look, they know what they're doing behind the scenes. They know of each other's movements and actions and all this. So they know what's going on, in my humble opinion, folks. So when I look at something like this, I can't help but think this is a thumb in the eye to the U.S. from Putin, of course. It's also a strategical chess game. And on top of that, maybe they genuinely don't believe in this climate change narrative. And I'm not saying that it is true. I'm not saying it's fake. I'm saying, truthfully, I don't know. You folks know where I stand on that in more of an opinionated perspective relative to the extraterrestrial angle. I think there's a big part to play in that regard. But again, think of that as you will, right? So the next thing is that Germany says that booster injections are now offered as early as 4 weeks after the last vaccination in the federal state of North Rhine-Westphalia, or RND, according to RND, excuse me. Take that as you will. I really do mean that, and I'm not trying to say good or bad. I don't know what to say. The next thing is that no more international travel for 12 to 15-year-olds without the NHS COVID pass, UK Health Secretary Sajid Javid proclaims. We saw that coming, truthfully. Terrible, but we saw it coming. The next thing is that Biden will not extend student loan relief. Student loan payments are set to restart February 1st of 2022, according to Forbes. Again, he could sign a bill right now and get rid of student debt completely, but it's a big circle. It's a big circle. We know this already. The Democrats are working with the Republicans to make sure nothing really changes, and that's it. It's just a big circle. The same way we talk about the ETs keeping us in this duopolistic fight of infighting and all that within societies and cultures and all that within the human species. Same thing, my opinion, but that's how I see it. I think a lot of you would agree. The next thing is that protests in several Eastern German cities against COVID restrictions and compulsory vaccinations are ongoing and happening as I record this, I believe. In Magdeburg, for example, people are chanting resistance, resistance. Again, part of my... I don't... The reason, guys, I'm at a bit of a loss here is because... Honestly, I don't know the inner workings of Germany as much as I would like to, politically, intelligence-based, and otherwise. And even then, you don't know if you really know things unless you're on the inside. And even on the inside, you might have more questions than those on the outside. The point I'm trying to make, though, is that I thought Germany would have been the last country to do any of this kind of stuff. Again, granted, their recent history and all that. And I mean absolutely zero disrespect to the German people. I really do. I just, again, we know that Germany's always tried to stay away from wars and things like this ever since World War II for obvious reasons. And I mean, I'm just surprised. With that being said, though, like I said 2-3 weeks ago, and like many of you also said as well, when Austria caved to a lot of this stuff, that, again, the dominoes started to fall metaphorically. One European country caved to this, and that's it. It just kept going and going. So, I have some friends in Germany. I'm glad that they're getting out. The next thing is that the European Union has slapped sanctions on Russian mercenary group Wagner. The EU has accused the group of human rights abuses and carrying out clandestine operations on the Kremlin's behalf. Maybe. Very possible. I wouldn't rule it out. But what, the CIA doesn't do that? And I'm not trying to defend Putin. I'm not trying to defend Russia. But I'm saying if we're going to be consistent here, let's be consistent. Truthfully. So... The next thing is that U.S.-backed SDF forces have carried out a deadly operation in eastern Syria. U.S.-backed Kurdish forces say Operation in Der Az for targeted ISIL or ISIS fighters. But Sana news agency says civilians were killed in the raid as well. I see, okay. So basically, they did what they did last time, from my understanding, and it doesn't surprise me, but I'm also not going to lean to, the U.S. killed innocent people either, even though they probably did based on their record, based on people like Assange, Snowden, you name it. So, again, it depends how you view it, right? I mean, when it comes down to the morals and ethics, I mean, it gets tough because you could start to make the debate of, if the reason why you and I can wake up in the morning, say in Europe or in the West or in Africa, in relative safety is because of immoral actions done by, that of our intelligence agencies. But the question is, to what metric or extent? Again, I don't have the answer, guys. I think you know where I'm leading with this, so I don't want to spend too much time on it, but I genuinely don't have the answer, and So, the next thing is that Sudan police have fired tear gas at Khartoum protesters. Pro-democracy groups say the military should not be part of the government as they cannot be trusted to lead the transition to democracy. The problem with this kind of stuff, guys, in my humble opinion, is how do you know who's a pro-democracy group and who isn't? This is the issue. And again, the only people that suffer during this time are the innocent people. The people that just want, bread and butter, they want literally food, milk to feed their family, just trying to survive day by day. So this is the thing. The next thing is that, Turkish Lira has fallen to a new low and the central bank has intervened. Turkish Lira has weakened past 14 to the dollar on Monday, prompting the central bank to sell dollars to shore up the embattled currency for a fourth time this month. This could be President Erdogan doing this on purpose for intelligence reasons. This could be other countries doing this on purpose for intelligence reasons. I'm leaning with intelligence here, from who I don't know. Just my opinion, but I'm leaning with something. This seems like a message to Erdogan saying, you really want to press me, or whoever it is, look what's happening. This is just my opinion. Could be wrong. The next thing is that Palestinians were killed during a funeral at a Lebanon refugee camp. Hamas officials say the violence erupted after a dispute broke out during the funeral procession of one of its members. If it's within its own group, again, I'm not trying to say let them die, but let them settle their own affairs in their own ways. And I'm not trying to say, again, this is the problem, guys, with the morals and ethics of all of it. You can't save everybody. And I would even dare to say that aliens would probably tell us the same thing. Maybe you can. But this is the thing. If it's infighting in that regard, I don't know, like, who am I to comment on that? If these people, part of Hamas, signed up for doing what they do and what have you, I'm not trying to say bad or good for that sake. I'm trying to be neutral. They assume these things happen. I don't know what else I could say, truthfully. So the next thing is that Tigray rebels have retaken Ethiopian heritage town Lalibela, according to the residents there. TPLF forces are patrolling the town, witnesses say, less than 2 weeks after government forces claim to have recaptured it. This is the thing. This is why I like on-the-ground reporting. I like to hear more from the residents than anybody else, even though sometimes residents could be living in a bubble relative to the fear imposed on them, so I understand the external aspect of reporting. This is the problem, guys. One says this, one says that. Again, just shows you how many cheap parlor tricks are conducted that you and I are seeing more and more. The next thing is that kidnapped Red Cross workers have been freed in eastern DRC, Democratic Republic of Congo, if I'm not mistaken. Two staff members abducted last month in North Kivu province have been freed, ICRC delegation head says. Great. This is why I wanted to put this in there, something nice and positive for once. But again, that's not going to get clicks for these news media outlets, right? Again, we got to look at it like that. The next thing is that Mali's leader promises election timetable by New Year. The leader of Mali's military government says a timetable for a return to democratic rule will be announced by January 31st. Okay. I mean, let's see if again, we have to be, skeptical and considerate of all the intelligence, potential covert operations there and what have you. So it's hard for me to say at this point, truthfully. The next thing is that Indian police officers have been killed in a Kashmir rebel attack. At least a dozen officers were wounded in the attack in Srinagar, according to authorities, hours after two suspected rebels were killed by police. That's unfortunate to hear, and I genuinely mean that. I'm not, again, whether you're a police officer or a soldier in your respective country, I get it. As I've said the other day, you know what you're signing up for in a certain regard, but at the same time, no one wants this to be the consequential way of how one's individual life will end. Right. Speaking of which, before I continue on the news on the left-hand side here, I just wanted to say very quickly that according to Brinkwire.com, Biden will form a rapid response team to investigate unexplained technology. I don't know if this is being led by a positive faction or negative one. It's hard to say because the DOD's attempt failed and now the Gillibrand-Rubio amendment has pushed through. For those familiar with the UAP UFO topic on disclosure, we'll see. When I see Biden, I just see, and I'm not trying to disrespect him, I just see puppet. Actually, I would say that probably about every president moving forward, to tell you the truth. The next thing is that a Brazil judge has mandated proof of vaccination for foreign visitors. The Supreme Court justice rules that all travelers arriving in Brazil must present proof of vaccination to enter the country. Look, I'm not from Brazil. If that's what the Supreme Court justice has ruled, and so be it. I mean, I respect that. I disagree with it, but it's not my country, so I have less of a prominent opinion, if you want to call it that, to make. So, the next thing is that the Brazil court has convicted 4 for the nightclub blaze that killed 242. Owners of Kiss nightclub and band members found guilty of murder and attempted murder. Again, as long as the legal process was legitimate, there was no corruptive interference, and that was the decision based on a jury relative to how a jury is selected or a court case is decided in Brazil. So be it. The next thing is that the incoming Honduras government plans to keep Taiwan ties for now, according to officials. Ties with Taiwan they plan to keep. Comments come one day after Nicaragua broke off diplomatic relations with Taiwan, to resume ties with China. Again, a chess game. The people I feel bad for, the everyday people living in such countries. That's it. It's a chess game. It's a proxy chess game, in my opinion. The next thing is that, now this is big, Russia says that it may be forced to deploy the INF in Europe. Officials say, you know what INF means, folks? Intermediate range nuclear missiles could be deployed if NATO refuses to engage with Moscow. This is interesting. Speaking of interesting, to lighten the mood a little bit, Putin says that he drove a taxi after the Soviet Union fell to make ends meet. There was speculation about this, but not confirmed until he admitted it in a new documentary. In a new film, Russian President Putin describes the collapse of the Soviet Union as a, quote, tragedy, end quote, for most citizens. I mean, from Putin's mentality, he sees that as a tragedy. Absolutely, I don't disagree with that. I mean, if everyone saw it as a collapse, as a tragedy, I mean, it's hard to say. People like experts on Russia, like David Hoffman or others, will tell you otherwise. But again, we also have to be vigilant to the fact that depending on what quote unquote expert you ask, just check to see who funds them, who publishes their books. These are all the experts, so to speak. So I would also like a Russian perspective as well too, to get a full-on view, right? So, but the whole thing is that you see how Oliver Stone tried to do that, for example, with the Putin interviews between 2015 and 2017. He sat down with Putin for various multi-hour conversations for about over the course of 2 years. And then people started saying, oh, look, Oliver Stone, he's cozying up to authoritarians and whatnot. So then how are you going to get to the truth if you don't ask both sides? Do you see what I'm saying here, folks? It's all narrative. It's all a chess game. It's all an info war, really. No pun intended towards Alex Jones's show. The next thing is that Putin tells British Prime Minister that Russia wants talks to curb a NATO expansion. The UK tells Russia to, quote, de-escalate tensions, quote, with Ukraine as Moscow seeks to block Kiev's prospect of joining NATO. Again, we see this happening just like what happened 6-7 years ago. I think this happened with, excuse me, please forgive me, Lukashenko, I think it was. Please forgive me if I'm not accurate on that. I think it was Prime Minister Lukashenko. Anyways, you guys know where I'm getting at. I don't mean to disinform you folks. The next thing is that New Caledonia pro-independence parties have rejected a referendum result. Final results show a turnout for independence referendum was 43.90%, as a call to boycott the vote was largely heeded. Again, assuming this was done in a very smooth fashion, uncorrupted, so be it. Who would I be to say, right? The next thing is that top Japanese officials plan to skip the Beijing Olympics, according to reports. Saiko Hashimoto, the former head of Tokyo's Olympic Organizing Committee, is likely to represent Japan in the Winter Games in February. Again, Japan boycotting the Beijing Olympics, it's a proxy chess game between, the U.S. Japan's very close with U.S. intelligence. We know this. It doesn't take much to realize that. At least from on a surface level of things, I could be missing a major angle here. Please tell me if I am, folks. But yeah, I mean, I don't know what else to say at this point with respects to that. It's a chess game. I just can't help but think that the aliens above us are looking and laughing, going, "Look at these humans playing a chess game." I mean, that's just a little side note of mine, but. The next thing is that, speaking of a chess game, the U.S. has imposed sweeping sanctions on China, Myanmar, and North Korea. Let me just refresh the Twitter page for you folks, if you guys are checking there. Let's see here. Sorry, 1 second. Excuse me. Yeah, U.S. imposes sweeping sanctions on China, Myanmar, and North Korea. Washington says it wants to send a message that it will act against those who abuse the power of the state to inflict suffering and repression. That's a little bit ironic for Washington to say, but again, for this, for the politicians in Washington to comment on, but we'll leave that as it is because I don't want to get into that. The next thing is that an NFT called Bored Ape was accidentally sold for $3,000 instead of $300,000. Yeah. These NFTs, they're ridiculous, but they're selling. Again, seems to be like, I'm not an economist. Please forgive me if this is a bad example, but it reminds me of gold in a lot of ways. Looks shiny, nice, not necessarily useful, but people invest in it when they feel that, global fiat currencies are not doing well. NFTs seem to be another version of that. I'd like to think I have somewhat of a decent grasp on NFTs and how they work, and I mean it's useless, I think, in a lot of ways. Maybe I'm wrong. Please forgive me if I am incorrect, and if some of you are saying, Dave, you moron, it's not useless, so please forgive me. But yeah, geez, that sucks. The next thing is that Kim Kardashian, and this, I want to report this because just bear with me here, is one step closer to her dream of becoming a lawyer after revealing she has passed a key law exam on her 4th attempt. The reality TV star and businesswoman posted the news on social media, urging fans never to give up on goals that they have set their mind on. She's 41 and has spent years advocating for criminal justice reform, including lobbying at the White House. No, we don't need these people. I'm going to leave this to Tim Dillon to do a rant on, but we don't need these people. No, I'm sorry. There's no chance. If you want to run, sure. And if the people vote her in, as if she runs for public office, then what can I say? Shame on the people. No. This is exactly what's wrong with the world. Not because she was a reality TV star. I mean, for crying out loud, Ronald Reagan was a Hollywood actor, I believe. It's not about that. It's about her as a person. So I'm not going to get into all that, but it's just my opinion. I know you folks like to hear it. The next thing is that a 2-year BBC investigation into Black Axe, a Nigerian student fraternity which evolved into a dreaded mafia group, has unearthed new evidence of infiltration of politics and a scamming and killing operation spanning the globe. Yeah, I mean, these new organized crime groups, they're hard to keep up with these days, truthfully. So it could be anyone and everyone, whether it's in the cyber world, real world, a bit of both, whether it's drugs, whether it's extortion, I mean, money laundering, it's all over the place. So again, tech sort of, the advancement of technology hampered down on old traditional based organized crime, but new tech has given ways to new means, right? So you better know what you're doing with a computer if you want to get into that. Not that I'm advocating for it, but I don't think I think that goes without saying. The final thing is that Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi's Twitter account was hacked with a message saying India has adopted Bitcoin as legal tender and would distribute it to all citizens. The tweet was swiftly deleted, and his office said the account had been very briefly compromised. It is the second time Mr. Modi's Twitter account has been hacked. He is a prolific tweeter and has more than 70 million followers, the most of any world leader. I think, did Trump have more than him before Trump got booted? I'm not sure. And I'm genuinely asking. I don't know. Yeah, that's kind of funny, so to speak. I imagine the markets moved a little bit, or quite a bit, depending on how long that tweet was up for. But anyways, folks, that's it for today. Thank you so much on both the members and on the public end for the support. And we'll catch all of you very, very soon. Cheers.